We will get started. Tell you what are we doing here? We are doing the Hines Rowing Center coaches, participants, rowers, safety meeting. Thank you all for your participation. I will tell you that I think all of you have heard me already that we are recording the Zoom meeting, and our wonderful videologist or something is going to be recording it on the camera for some of our demonstrations. And as you can see on the agenda, there's lots of lines that say links, so that no matter how wonderfully, I do make up words, or how poorly this meeting's conducted, you'll all have the information. Okay, first of all, I would like to talk about the introduction. My name is Lois Trench Hines. I call myself the managing member of this property of 3.24 acres, which is this building and the other building, parking lot, and not the street. The Mario Tucker is the director of operations, which means I'm always saying, did you do this? Did you do that? We need this. Oh, I forgot to tell you, whatever. Director of operations, and she's my assistant on other things. I really am very, very fortunate. She is also the newly appointed, elected coach of Haverford College. Okay. So, Tim Hagan, he is with
He's on the water.
WBC.
Yeah.
We're upstairs whenever. Tim Hagan is very much involved in the coaching and especially with the juniors, right? And I've known him for more than a decade, so I'm very pleased that he has joined our facilities here. He's very experienced. Joe Sullivan, there's my go-to man. Joe, who owns that boat? Why did that move here? And so, but he's also a very respected, and I can truly say loved coach for the juniors. So, thank you, Joe. Jason Beck, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, Jason Beck. You don't know
You're
me?
Vice President.
Yeah, I'm the Vice President of White Marsh, representing as well from the board. Trying to make sure that from the board perspective and from our membership perspective, that safety is a priority and a strong consideration for whenever we go out in water. So have been working together with Lois and Mariel on some opportunities to help educate our membership as well as programs within it.
Megan Kennedy is supposed to be coming. She's probably getting off the water. She knows how I feel about water in the spring, and we're both from the mountain. And then, of course, Kirk Beckman is coming in from their fundraiser of a slide, but he'll be here eventually. And also our guest, Sharon Mallet. Now, Sharon, why don't you introduce yourself? I call her my colleague because we're both considered pioneers in women rowing.
Yeah.
I started in '65. When did you row?
I started with the first Marist College now University women's crew in 1973.
And you were a coach?
I rowed Marist rowing club on the Harlan. So Marist on the Hudson. Harlan is not really a river, it's a canal. And it's flooded by diving and skates. And when you have a coach down there who's not familiar with the area, they should take a lesson before they approach the boat. And then I rode Portuguese Lagoon for Jack Soldier. I swept there, I went to Sculver. And then I coached at Marist for 3 years, and I came down to Westford, raced competitively with Westford and both Sweet Down Stalls, and then went to Fairmont Rowing Association and competed masters mostly there, and worked with Westford Masters. And then next to Westford, I was elected as the Midland rep to U.S. Rowing. So I was on the U.S. Rowing board at a very special time. It's when the National Women's Rowing Association merged with USRA, and it was no longer the Oarsman magazine. Nice to meet you all. This is a great group. Happy to be here.
Welcome.
Okay, and you're also going to give us an official certified U.S. Coast Guard discussion on cold water safety.
It's not that long.
Okay, now, I consider safety starting once you touch Washington Street. And what I'm talking about is I am forever struggling a lot with the young rowers, because I remember when I was a young rower and I had to be coming down Washington Street within the speed limit. When I see dust coming up from the car, I know we're not following the speed limit. Okay, so the parking lot is my big dilemma at the time. It doesn't look bad now, and in the morning, after college, it'll be empty, pretty much. But we have more cars than we can fit in our property. Villanova has told me again that we can use their parking lot until about mid to end June, and then they're going to put the shovel and the earth to begin their construction. I really am not sure what we can do next year to consolidate the number of cars that are here. The hardest part of all this are the pickup people, whether they're parents, grandparents, neighbors, whoever. I am offering a remedial reading class because they cannot seem to understand the words. Rowers and coaches go this way, pick up, make a left. You have no idea how important this is when it comes in the afternoon, starting around 3 to 4 o'clock. Please, all the coaches that are here, and all the coaches that will eventually, hopefully, read this, or listen to this, please make sure the message gets to the drivers that they must make an immediate left when they come through the gate and pick up at the exit gate. And I saw one little boy, he's not that, but he was maybe grade school, shivering by the dumpsters. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm waiting to be picked up. And so apparently the word is getting out. Do not come up to this school because every now and then we get a bus or we get a van, they can't make the jump. All right, it's boring and I do it every year and I still get dragged when I don't leave go of a car. I'm so stupid. I don't leave go and I get dragged because they're not going the right. We do have, and this is all, and Marie, you're taking care of this, I think. We do have pickup. This is all on a link. So all the parents should have this. So they all should be printed out and handed out.
It's also all on the website.
Yeah.
Same as usual.
Right. Oh, that reminds me. I really want this meeting to be conversational. You all have something to give to your colleagues. The other thing that we have to do, I'm asking all the drivers to register your car. Why? Because I can't tell you how many times we have looked at film of cars in the parking lot to resolve an issue. All right? And it is important whether somebody, we haven't had any thefts lately, but we have a lot of people now walking down Washington Street, seeing all these cars. Also, if there's I didn't hit that car. Oh, here's the film. So it resolves issues. So hire the parking attendant again. It's not the two young men that have been here. This gentleman he's mature, has a couple of children, and he will be on duty from 3 to 7, Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday, 7 to 2. But this is really, and what it's going to be, this is how it's going to work. All of you can download this from the web, and you're registering your car. When you turn it in, you're going to get one of those window clings, and we're going to put in it 2025. You don't get your cling unless you turn this in. And, yes, sir.
And it can all be done digitally, right? We're
Yeah.
not turning
Yes.
a hard copy.
There's a Google form link on
Right.
the agenda. Yeah. And I can send that out if anybody has
That's for all
it.
rowers.
It's for all rowers and
Anyone who
coaches.
can drive.
Yeah.
And Lois wants it to be done again for 2025, even if you've already done it
Right.
for
Because you're gonna put a new car.
And where would you like the stickers on the left, on the rear window?
It's going, well, actually, for safety, where it really should be in the rear window driver's side.
Left driver's side.
Yeah,
Left
because
rear.
it doesn't, because then the parking employee will say, sorry, sir, I'm sorry, madam, if you're not coming into this parking lot. And, really, you don't want them backing up because traffic will be open. Just send them to the exit.
And
If it's
really-
in the back, then they won't see it.
What?
If it's in the back, then you won't see it when they're pulling in.
Yeah, so you want on the left rear,
In
left
the
rear
driver's
driver's side.
side.
But if it's in the rear, when they're pulling in, you wouldn't see
You
if they
wouldn't
have
see
it.
it until it's not.
Well, I mean, the cars aren't that big. You just can see it.
But they would be
Yeah,
already
it's
past
the
it.
right
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't be passing. They should be going straight.
Well, that's-
So really, when I'm the parking attendant, you've all, hopefully, most of you have not seen me be the parking attendant. I stand in a way, in such a way they can't pass me.
So before that, let's step back there. I would recommend who's coming, who's running the guard. I would suggest asking them how would they prefer to see it, because that might tell us which best place it, right? Because that will help. Because the other thing is something this person would probably also be very helpful in reinforcing the rules of telling people like just go this way.
And we will
go this
give
way.
him copies of the.
Right.
Of
You
the,
may need a flag or a globe just to kind of help guide,
the
right?
best thing is for me not to be there, right, to keep it, and then, and we have the logs or the wood that keep the aisles, but try to snuggle up a little bit. In other words, you have to be able to get out, because a lot of these drivers are young, and their perception is not quite what it will be in another 10 years.
Lois, when are you gonna build the parking garage?
I know. You know what? I thought about it. I have thought about it. The problem is
Right.
we're in a flood zone, and the pilings would have to go as deep as the Borgata put theirs in.
I think you're on code of conduct now.
Right. It's all in the lease. The coach of the different organizations get a copy of it. Some say send it to the president. Some say send it to the athletic director. We're making sure that the coach always has a copy of the lease, because in the lease, one of the most important parts of that lease is the code of conduct. According to my insurance agents, everybody should get a copy of the code of conduct, sign it, or the parents sign it, and return it to us. I should have that on file.
Lois, again, hard copy or digital?
I don't care.
Either.
Either.
Getting them
Yeah,
to
no, it's linked.
confirm that they have received it. They're not, that's the responsibility of understanding it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make sure it's Lois. That's one of the things the lawyer told us years ago was in South Jersey about. Make sure it just says they've received the code of conduct, not that they read it and understand it, because our understanding may be different than someone else's. If you want to claim they violated something, if they received it, it's on them to read it, and if they have questions,
That's
but
our insurance protection.
yeah, they could come in and say, well, this was my understanding of what this rule meant.
Right.
And no, it's not your understanding, it's what we mean, or you.
I did mention the fact that both Heather Hollis and Marie Savard, that you can see, they wish they were.
So just to go over locker rooms, if anybody has any problems with the space, I know some of the signs had fallen down. So we were going to put those back up. In addition to, I don't think we got to the boys' locker room last year. And if there are any comments about space or anything that you think would help, I'm open to suggestions. With the Erg rooms, and specifically with the Ergs, the only thing I wanted to go over is White Marsh and Radnor have the Ergs that are downstairs. And in general, as always, there's to be no touching of anybody's equipment except your own. If you're interested in using Ergs, you need to talk to Joe or you need to talk to Travis. That's not an option. And same goes with any equipment. You must ask the head coach if you're to touch any equipment, and that really needs to be done before the moving of the equipment happens. Also in the Erg room, those are WBC Ergs as well, and the WBC team is pretty open to sharing the space, but you have to talk to the coach first. So that's just what I want to go over there. In terms of the Upper Schuylkill River safety guidelines, in that packet, which is also everything's on the website in addition to being linked on the agenda, that includes the swim waiver and the course map. So there's also a wonderful map here that has the course laid out, but there's a YouTube video that goes through the entire course. And we haven't changed those safety guidelines recently, but I always encourage people to go over that with your teams just to make sure, especially if you have newer rowers, newer coaches, newer assistant coaches, just so we're all on the same page, because as we've reiterated, like, safety is absolutely number one. So we don't need to go through that. Yeah.
You could set the PSRA swim test.
Yeah, that's fine. And everything could be digital. In fact, I pretty much prefer it.
Yep.
But if paper's easier for you, that's fine too. And then with the code of conduct and the swim waiver that I receive, I'm going to write down the athletes that you've returned and then send that back to you to ensure that we have up-to-date rosters. Mid to late March would be best. If there's any changes in terms of equipment, athletes, coaching staff, just send me an email, let me know. No big deal. Just keep us in the loop, Lois and myself. With the coaches and contact list, especially with that, we want to make sure that everybody's phone numbers and emails are up to date. It's really important. Again, that's on the clipboard, so if there's any changes or if you want to go over if there's any corrections, again, everything's linked. That's not on the website because we don't want everybody to have access to that information, but that is linked. And then if you want me to send you a copy for some reason via email, I can do that as well. The rack assignments, so things are always changing. I try to keep that as up to date as possible. Again, that's going to be linked on the agenda. That's not going to be on the website. And I'm always open to, conversation. If I made a mistake, please let me know. If something changed, let me know. Yeah, so in consideration with your back to the water, then this is your right side and this is your left side. Some of the racks towards the parking lot are on a diagonal, and that's sort of in a diagonal towards the corner where the trailers are, with your back to the water. With practice schedule, we have a printout here, a larger printout that's also linked. And if you ever have any changes, let me know. We're also going to implement an HRC Campus calendar that I'll put on the website. So if you want to do fundraisers, if you want parents' nights, you can consult that first and then send us an email and let us know what you want to do. We always want coaches and the teams to have access to their campus. We just want to make sure that there's enough room, timing, practice times, whatnot. And that's new this year. So it's not on the website yet, but it will be soon, especially because WBC has a lot of fundraisers and events. But there's plenty of room to share the campus, so it should be fine. In terms of launches, there are to be no more launches, no more additions. We were able to squeeze in the Haverford College and the second Devon Prep launch, which is totally fine. But under no circumstances should anybody get any more weightless launches, unless you're going to buy a dock in addition to that, which would be great. So let me know.
Oh, the practice for upriver dock is coming Monday. So that'll be fixed. Yeah.
I'll send out an email with that update as well once all that's complete. Docking assignments, that's also linked. We also have the layout here if you wanted to take a look at it. Nothing else has changed. There's an additional Notre Dame launch, but that's in the same parking area as before. Haverford College and Devon Prep are going to be on the coaches launch as well. So those are the only main changes. And then we're on the slip section. Megan, if you wanted to mention anything for the slips.
The launch dock is the one that's currently blocked off. We should be launching that. Marie knows which dock to use. Everybody has to be nice to Marie and say hello when they're launching from the correct dock.
Marie doesn't have to be nice.
Marie doesn't have to be nice back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the key. Is like weekends, obviously, you have to change the pattern, which is easier said than done. But,
Can we use the return dock to launch until 4:15? I thought that's what it was last year.
Yeah, during the week.
4:15.
During the
Okay.
week only.
During the week,
Weekends,
okay. Yeah,
the weekend, Saturday morning, we're all here at the exact
Understood.
same time on
Yep.
top of each other, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
The first 2 days were like teaching the novices how to put a boat in the water, get in and out of the boat.
Yeah.
Should we just use the landing dock for that? So
yeah, for the first shift, that makes sense. Yeah, if you guys are like, again, novices all take, even when you're not teaching them, it takes a little while.
Yes.
I think that we're all pretty, you can tell pretty quickly that they're novices and like give them a little bit.
I'm willing to buy the Oar Racks commercially that will be strong enough to hold both sweep blades and yet somebody with private boats really should not bring in 3 sets of blades. Oh, ready for our star guest here.
I think Lois invited me as a visual symbol. U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary.
She's all dressed up.
Well, we have two uniforms in the auxiliary. Just to give you a little background, we're the volunteer service of the Coast Guard. They call us the silver side. The Coast Guard is the gold side. And I've been in it for 14 years now. I actually started in the mainline flotilla, and then I moved to the Bronx, moved back to where I was at home, and I was at the Stepping Stones flotilla on the East River where the lighthouse is. And now I'm currently in Cape May. So we have two uniforms. We have the same uniforms that the gold side has, only our buttons are silver on our dress uniforms. And we have trop blues, which we can wear. I'm currently doing public affairs today. So I could have worn the trop blues, which is the navy slacks and the light blue top, or this is the ODUs. And since I'm in Cape May and I'm on the base a lot volunteering, and that's boot camp for everybody that enters the Coast Guard. And it's called boot camp, and everybody wears ODUs. So when I go on the base, I pretty much have to be in ODUs. And basically, anybody can join the Coast Guard. I have some brochures here, and it's great. One of the basic requirements of Coast Guard is to take about boating safety. And I know that the USRA now makes you take about boating safety, okay? So the Coast Guard Auxiliary, we mirror a lot of things that the Coast Guard do in training, except for we don't do law enforcement. We cannot carry guns. That's the only difference. But we can train to be anything. But basically, our activities are recreational boating safety is mostly those gazillion-dollar pleasure boats, not these $1 rowing shells. I'm bound by duty to review for you coping with cold water immersion and hypothermia. Okay, and I did look at the U.S. Rowing website, and they have a version of this. So stage 1 is initial cold shock. That's when you go in the water, whether you're in a team boat or if you're in a kayak, you're in a single. It happens within the first 3 to 5 minutes. It's caused by immediate involuntary gasping, hyperventilation, panic, and vertigo. All of these can cause water inhalation and drowning. I'm sure we've all heard a story over the years where this has happened to a rower. Immersion can also cause sudden changes in blood pressure, heart rate, and heart rhythm. The second stage is swim failure. Happens 3 to 30 minutes after immersion. During that stage, the person loses muscle strength and control. Even normal, strong swimmers can lose strength to pull themselves out of the water and keep their head above water. And I believe this can happen in less than 3 minutes as well, depending on the state and the circumstances and clothing, the health of the person. Stage 3, long-term immersion hypothermia, happens after 30 minutes or more. Cold water pulls heat from the body, and the body's core temperature drops. This eventually leads to loss of consciousness and death. Now, 30 minutes, you don't think about 30 minutes here, because most of you have coaches in a launch, which is phenomenal. I haven't been up here in several years, and I did talk to Art earlier, and he did say most of the boats that row out of here have a coach with them. I am aware of a situation that happened down in Wilmington. I think it was a year ago, where a master's floor was out, and you think 30 minutes isn't a long time to be in a shell. Well, that floor swamped, and they tried to get back to shore. I don't know how long they were in the water, but it wasn't looking good. And they got to a bridge, and they decided they might have to swim back to shore. I think luckily a coach came by and salvaged them. That was a scary situation. Okay, so it does happen in rowing because they were isolated until that coach came out. Stage 4 is post-immersion collapse. This is what you have to be aware of. Can happen during or after the rescue. A drop in blood pressure can lead to cardiac arrest. So especially for masters, it's after you get out of the water. You have to be aware of that, okay? The best defense against cold water immersion is to prevent vessel capsizing. Well, we have our rowing shop. In addition to layered clothing, and insulation. Joe, we were just talking about that earlier. Basically, if you fall out of the shell, it's pretty simple. Don't leave it. Conserve your energy. Okay? If you can, get on the shell. If you can't get in it, get on it. Because when you're in the water, your body is losing temperature rapidly. It's better to be on it. Look at your coach. Here I am, yell at your coach. The best cold water scenario, and I've seen this on a lot of the local organizing websites, is to have a coaching launch within 100 meters of the shell at all times. It's considered dangerous to be out there if the water is less than 50 degrees. It's basically 33 yesterday and 33 today. And the sun's shining, but it's still cold. So you try to reboard, get as much as your body out of the water, even if you can't reboard. And basically, when you start to lose strength, first thing you're going to get is confusion, and then you're going to lose strength, okay? So the best thing to tell your athletes is they can't get out, their bodies out of the water, just scull gently. Do not waste any energy. The other thing is, the athletes don't have PFDs on, okay? It's pretty much impossible to put a PFD on when you're in the water, which they say, oh, throw them to the athletes, I'll put them on. No. At least they can use them to help. They can help them stay up and keep the body real tight until the coach can get everybody out of the water. Allow the life jacket or your flotation device to support you. You know, a lot of about boating safety classes and stuff, it's all about having your PFD on. Okay, so you're going to see in your boating safety class, you know, get in the infant position with your PFD or huddle with 3 other people, but they all have PFDs on. So Coast Guard, we don't do anything near the water without a PFD on. Okay, so kayak, you have to have a PFD on. But this is a very unique situation. So basically what you have to be aware of, it's all local organizing requirements, and many of you coach for institutions, and you know everybody has their own rules, okay? So I know at Vesper, you have the 4-hour rule, you have the 4-hour rule, I think you instituted that actually. And a lot of organizations have combined temperature. I know PGRC has the 70 combined water and air temperature. What I've seen is people don't follow these rules, okay? So I think it's very important that each organization has its requirements because there is no standard. The USRA doesn't have a standard. And I think, you know, there are people like yourself and other people. I know there's a person at PGRC who wants to get together to try to get some standards that everybody can follow, because you have 13 organizations rowing out of this facility alone. And, you know, there's university requirements, there's college requirements, there's club requirements, and everybody's pulled in all different organizations. I think from the feeling I got being here this morning, this is a pretty safe organization. The Hines Rowing community is pretty safe. Coach and launch is within 100 meters of the shelves at all times, right?
I still think that's too far.
Well, that's pretty much a standard. Actually, some of the organizations say you can visually see the crew, and I think that's too far away. So to me, like, everybody has their own version of this, and basically you have to do what you feel comfortable with, because the coach is the guardian of being out there in water that's less than 50 degrees. And 30 degrees is considered extremely dangerous, but rowers are used to it. So you can't talk the rowers out of that, even though it's extremely dangerous to be rowing in water this cold. The other most important thing is there should always be somebody on land with access to a cell phone, so that if necessary, you can call 911. And I think most coaches go out with cell phones now anyway, right? They have their little PFDs, cell phones with their PFDs. Okay, so there's not too much we can do with rowing except have a coach and be aware of the temperature and be aware of the weather forecast. Lois said you have thermometers on the docks so that you know the temperature of the water. You can also go Vesper's website has an automatic feed from the Schuylkill River monitoring system, so it gives you the flow and it gives you the water temperature down.
Yeah, in here too, because our flow rate is different than
Okay, well, I figured it was, but
It's also on the website.
as a coach, before you have your crew go on the water, you should check the weather as close as you can before launch. Everything that a rower can do cold weather is what they wear. Wear a base layer, thermal shirt, leggings, warm socks, no cotton. Okay? No cotton below 50. Wear a hat or a cap, a neck warmer too. Bring a hoodie or a jacket. Use pokies, which are fleece bags that go over your entire, you won't know what pokies are.
They're also sold by WBC
Okay.
over here.
Yeah.
Review the signs of frostbite and hypothermia and drink plenty of fluids. And I know you know all this, but it's good to review it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I want to take one note before we move on. You really want to put yourself in the mindset that if there is an emergency, are you going to be able to pull these kids out or your athletes out? Are you going to be able, do you have the resources? Do you have the time? And as Sharon went over, you're in a shock state. So what your normal ability is already going to be decreased. That was something that we had talked a lot about. It's just putting yourself in like, how much are you reasonably going to be able to do in an emergency situation? And actually, before we move on, would you be interested in talking about your experience at all, Dom?
Oh yeah.
Would you mind coming up to the front and talking about it?
Yeah, sure. So I was coaching Newport Rowing Club at the time, but it was a big effort across a lot of other coaches that some coaches flew right by the boat that was flipped, which was a shame. But it was an older masters crew that really needed help. And the flow is a lot different because it's tidal on the Christina River. So they got stuck up against a rusty old crane bridge. And so it was terrible for them. They were in the water we had them in the water trying to get them out for 15 minutes at least. So I don't know how long they were there before we got there. And we were just passing through. They had no way to get in touch with anyone way downriver. So if we weren't there, they would have just continued to drift out to the Delaware River. So I think they put new procedures in place, but I couldn't stress enough the fact that multiple coaches quickly acted and brought programs and boats back to the docks, and a couple coaches went back to save them pretty much. So it was a really good effort across all of the different coaches from different programs to make sure it was successful, or else we would have lost a couple older masters through that day. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, that's an excellent thing.
We row small boats. We've had doubles and singles flip before, but it's always happened in warmer weather. I was just thinking, if we flip like next week, I'm going to get the kids out and I'm going to leave the boat. I'm just going to leave the boat and let it flow downriver. But then that becomes a hazard in and of itself. So I would be trying to flag down, Don, can you go keep an eye on my boat so somebody doesn't row into it while I get the kids and get them a warm shower or whatever. Just sort of thinking about how all that plays out in really cold weather.
The good thing around here, Lower Schuylkill up here, since I've been here, anytime something does happen, anyone that's in the area comes right away to help. So we've always had good relations like that. No one just ignores someone. You get several coaches very quickly coming over. Do you need help? Can I do something? So that's always a good thing.
Sharon, thank you for coming today. Could you speak to the importance of not letting passengers in a moving motorboat, powered vessel, ride on the bow of the boat? Why that is important not to let them sit up there. One of my pet peeves is having a passenger in a launch sit up on the bow of that launch. If you hit a wake, if you throw it in reverse quickly, that person is going in the water. Especially saltwater boats, wake is more prevalent. And what happens when they fall in the water?
Do they have a PFD on?
No.
Well, that's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
and Sandy Killen was a referee, and he had somebody driving him in one of those Grenham aluminum boats before we had the no wake boats.
Okay, yeah.
And he was reffing, and he was standing up there, and the guy driving him, boom, Sandy goes into the water and he breaks his arm. And so that's why I think before pontoon boats, what are they called? No, Waivers. Then they put the rule in that you had to have a rope. Yeah. The referees had to hold on to the rope. So it isn't a good idea unless they have holding on to a rope and they have a PFDL.
Is out in their launches with like 4 or 5 kids in the launch as well, which is also over the capacity of the boat, unsafe. You're not going to be able to rescue anyone if you need to. So I mean, we all have the challenge of having an adult on land. So we're not leaving any children unattended on land, and that's in all of our leases. But you know, there's ways around that. So I know like sometimes people take all of their kids out because they don't have an adult to leave them on land. But I think we need to all figure out how to put processes in place to adhere to the land safety and responsibility, but also water safety and responsibility.
Right.
Well, I think Liz has something to add.
Yeah.
Something else I would suggest is think about where your exit points are, because if you have an emergency downriver and you're calling 911, using this address isn't going to be the safest option. So you should have on a card laminated in your launches the addresses for downriver as well, where you can get somebody out of the river.
Right. Yesterday, Joe, we talked about your issues of crews coming down in a flotilla and what should happen. I think this is important. Stand up, because you've all witnessed it and you're all ticked off. But we have to tell these people what they're doing wrong and why.
Yeah, and especially we talked about in the fall when the water was low. It's still fairly low right now. It's up a little bit from the rain last week, but more than 2 boats wide up here going either direction, and especially if you spread them out or get to the wrong side a little bit, it's going to create problems. And probably should keep a limit. You know, I know it's something we have to try to enforce ourselves, but the number of boats, and most of you guys are in 8s or 4s, so you don't usually have 4 or 5 boats with you at one time, like sometimes we do with the smaller boats. And this is something that I'll have to go with our own coaches if they're taking out more than 2 boats, to not spread them across the river at any point even. And the biggest thing, and I know I've heard from some of you about one of our coaches in particular, you know, traffic passing, you know, the right way, slower boats staying toward the banks as much as they can. They sit up this end, it's kind of hard with the rocks and stuff when the water's low, but allow the boats to pass. And I did mention it in one of our communications, you know, coming through is not the way to pass other boats and make them spread out wherever just because you want to hold a straight line. Because you're doing a piece or something, you know, to make sure we're following the proper traffic pattern, staying to the bank with the star boats, giving the right of way to the faster boats that come through on the outside, like toward the middle of the river, you know, passing on the port side, your starboard to the other team's ports. Trying not to split through teams, but you know, we all have to, if you're stopping, slide your boats toward the bank and have an aisle for people to get through. When you're turning boats, and I know to the other side, get over to the bank, because there's boats coming up river, and they go 2 or 3 strokes and start turning right in the middle. That we all have to be a little bit more conscious, because there is more traffic with more teams here. The teams have grown. Just kind of be aware before you turn. Check both directions so you don't turn, cutting someone off coming down behind you. Watch the boats that are coming up. Make sure you're not going to line your boats up right in front of someone who just started doing a piece. You know, just having kids, they don't always pay much attention. Yes, Jason?
Yeah, I just want to I was going to add something to okay. I would highly recommend with all the coaches and all your people that are running the launches, get comfortable with the launches that you're in. They should all have listed the amount of people that they allow, as well as the placement of those people. Ask yourself, are you giving enough space to rescue a crew that has issues? So be very aware of your equipment. That is saving you and your team. So just keep aware, know where people should sit. Make sure you have life vests for everyone that's on board, but make sure you can in turn save everybody that you need to.
And people with the weight of them.
And I saw the thing that says about the Kippy little bags or whatever. And most of them come with the emergency blanket things, the things that look like a piece of tinfoil sometimes. If anyone hasn't checked theirs for a while and your bags are getting wet, they lose the coating. I know, didn't realize it for a long time, but when I was coaching South Jersey and got everything out to dry and start pulling out they're wrapped in little pieces of plastic to begin with. You're looking at it, it's like, wait, these were gold when we put them in, they're silver. And now they just look like a sheet of plastic. The reflective coating does come off if they get wet. You may want to check and make sure that they still have the reflective coatings on them. And if not, get some new ones.
I just found this on the US Rowing website. They do have a Kippy kit bag. You get a 5% discount if you use the code USRA. But it has everything that you need, including like the emergency blankets, an oar, like a flashlight, an air horn, things like that. So if you're interested, it's on the US Rowing website.
Quick things from experience. We didn't have a 4 flip, but we did have a 4 hit 2 pieces of rebar that ripped right through the bottom of the boat. And obviously, number one priority is getting the kids safe. Luckily, there was another coach that came along, and he had a tow line with him, a tow rope. So, Dick mentioned that, get the kids out, don't worry about the boat. But we're also talking about $40,000 to $60,000 shells, and another coach is going to be around. So I keep it in my launch at all times now, just in case there's a situation. So you can tie it onto that shell, and at least it's not just floating around. And regarding these Kippy bags, what Coach Margaret did for us with the coxswains, it's a clear fanny pack, and it's waterproof. And inside the fanny pack, every single coxswain takes it every time they go out. I mean, this sounds silly and, duh, but it's got wrenches, it's got a whistle, it's got Band-Aids, it's got tape, it's got everything that the coach would have just in a smaller bag so that they have it there in case they need it. So just, if anybody is interested, we have a ton of them. We'd be happy to share.
The whistle or some kind of noisemakers, the one thing that if anyone's been stopped by the fish and boat people, the one time when I was asked questions, the first thing they asked was, "Do you have a whistle?" And
you
I
said,
must always have one in my tool bag, but we also just have whistle. But we have them. What's that?
The megaphone not down?
Any kind of noisemaker, something that can signal. So the megaphones would work if you have one of the megaphones that has a button to make the siren. But the whistles, like I said, he asked if I had a whistle, which I did, and we have them attached to our Kippy bags too on the handles. But that was the first thing they asked. Not about the PFDs. I think I had an inflatable vest on, maybe, because we have some of them too. But
yeah, we do that.
But it wouldn't hurt to have them, like you said, with the coxswains or.
In those situations where you're not going to spot
The bags that we have, they also have a little flashlight in it just for that exact reason.
Yep.
Tell us how we can make this better. What did we do that was helpful? What did we skip? The most important thing that I've seen the few times I've been on the river is that a coach is coaching a group of boats, and they coach them as if they're the only ones on the river. Well, that's not the case. You have people either upstream or downstream. Be aware, like when you're flying a plane, when you fly a plane, a private plane, you got to constantly look. And that's what you have to do. Right. Okay. Anybody else have anything else?
Last note, just because we talked about tow lines, and especially with just tying your launches down, just to make sure that we're double checking our rope health and making sure that if there's any beginning of wears and tears,
I can attest to that.
too soon. Over that, especially because it's something that you just rely on it and you kind of forget because you use it all the time, but just making sure that like at the first sign of wear and tear, that's something that you would want to replace.
Can I add to that? If
Yes.
you share a cleat with somebody else, or you have to move somebody else's boat to get yours out to make sure that it gets tied down properly.
Yeah, learning how to tie a cleat is not difficult, but there's a lot of people who don't know how to tie cleats.
We're going to come back in about a month or so, when we have 3 weightless tied together and whatever, and she's going to go over safety of how to tie a boat.
Great.
Right? Okay.
Lights on boats, launches, and shells have to be visible.